Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Will DuPree here in the KXAN live studio, about to bring you a conversation that undoubtedly many of you families are already having out there. Now, the new school year for many districts here in the Austin area is already underway, and it's starting off unlike any time in our lives. The largest districts are beginning virtually, but it remains unclear if families will want their children going back to in-person classes when school leaders decide to offer that option. Now, as a part of our Set for School coverage here at KXAN, we invited some parents as well as an educator to share their thoughts about kids learning during a pandemic. So let's introduce you to our guests today. Joining me here in our Zoom call, as we conduct so much business here lately, is Ashley Walker, Nicole Lee, and Michael Ota. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Please welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, before we discuss a lot of your situations and some other topics we want to get into, I want to start with this. So in states, in places like Georgia and South Dakota, Nebraska, they're closing down buildings after teachers and students got cases of COVID-19, and they've had to have many more quarantined because of that. Hearing all of that about what's happening in other states, what do you think about the district's plans where your kids go to school?
Well, I can start. I have family in Missouri and Colorado, and it varies so much. So in Missouri, they are choosing virtual for everyone until late October. And then in Colorado, which was just a hot spot not too long ago, they are going in person. I feel like our districts around here are making a good, safe decision to start virtually and offer those choices of in-person, hybrid, even though it's very tough, I'm sure, hybrid. But we need to serve our families, and our families need a choice. So I feel like they're taking good measures in place to offer that.
Ashley, what do you think?
I think that starting off virtually is a really good thing for our district. I do wonder about the September 8th deadline of going back in person, if that's going to be feasible for many students. I know for my family personally, we're just going to continue to do virtual learning for as long as we can. And I do question some of the practices that they have in place, when it comes to how they're going to isolate people and things like that who do get it. But other than that, I think that by starting off virtually, it's a really good thing that they're doing that.
And Michael, as your thoughts, what do you think about the district's plans where your kids go to school?
I think it is, as Ashley and Nicole said, it is good that we pretty much across the board, districts, especially in Central Texas, are starting off virtually. I question the length of time and the rate of positivity that we have right now with the COVID testing. I would like to see that a little bit longer. I do know that the state the TEA let up and is allowing districts to provide virtual the entire year. And so that's helping our family and easing our mind. We don't want our kids to be in person until there's a vaccine or the virus is under control. So we don't feel like we're having to make a hard choice, which we did feel earlier about homeschooling if the district was going to force in person.
Thank you for those thoughts. I want to jump to you, Michael, again, and start with you. So you were telling me that you have 2 students who will start their first day of classes. I believe it's Thursday, right?
That's correct, yes.
And you also told me that one of your sons is on the autism spectrum. How are you preparing him for this virtual learning change at the moment? Talk about that.
Well, as we've learned, he's 13 now, so we've had a lot of practice with him, and we did a lot of different things in the spring to help him. especially with what they call executive functioning. That's being able to organize thoughts and sequence things. And we're, the number one thing is making sure he understands there's going to be a routine. It's going to look very different than it did in the spring and especially in the summer. And carving out those times that he's able to ask for help, communicating with his teachers when he's needing that one-on-one attention, and really most importantly, giving him those choices of when he can play his video games, when he can socialize with his friends online, because right now it's sort of free, but school's going to be creating that structure very similar to in-person.
And Michael, you work with high-functioning adults who fall on the autism spectrum as well, and you said that you've been interacting with some of their families to talk about how virtual learning has affected them and how the new school year has gone for them. What have they told you?
In some of the other districts, the expectations that they published for parents or gave that information out were very different than the actual rollout. And a lot of parents didn't understand that it was going to be face-to-face online pretty much all day. And so they had a hard time preparing their kiddos with autism for that expectation. But as some of them have already been in school for a week now, things have settled down and that routine is there. Just some of the districts, some of the schools didn't communicate as well as is needed for individuals with autism.
Hopefully they'll deal with those issues because the school year's getting started, and for at least for a few weeks, it will be all virtual. Now, speaking of virtual learning, I want to turn to you, Ashley, because you were telling me that your daughter is starting kindergarten, which is kind of unbelievable to have kind of her whole education career start online right out the gate. How is she handling it? What are the conversations you're having with her about how to get started with school?
Well, for the past week or so, I've been trying to prepare her for online learning. So we have her desk set up and everything, her school system. She has a laptop and, she has her books and everything and her paper, pencils. So I've been putting her at a desk, we're going over sight words. We're going over learning how to read and things like that, just so that she can learn to sit down, sit still for a while, because she's going to be having to do that. And it's interesting because she just wants to get up and play. That's all she really wants to do. And she can't do that right now. And I really feel terrible for her that she can't experience kindergarten like a kindergartner should. But I have to do what's best for my family.
You also told me that it's very important that her learning in any way is held virtually, held remotely because of your family's situation. Tell me about why that is exactly.
We live with my mom, and my mom is considered high risk. She has a number of ailments, and my mom and my daughter are best friends. You can't keep them apart. So when everything was first rolling out about school starting, my mom was like, just send her to school. And I had to tell her, you can't touch her, you can't be in the same room with her, you can't hug her, kiss her. And when I said that, the reality hit both of us at that time that we would have to completely change life. And I don't want to put my mom in any type of jeopardy whatsoever. So, and we know kids get sick really easily. We don't know how this virus will affect kids and how they can spread it or anything like that. So it's just, I want to make sure my mom stays safe. That's my number one priority.
Of course. Well, Nicole, let's bring you into this right now, because I think you have an interesting and a different perspective than both Ashley and Michael. So you were telling me that you just left your job as a teacher for one of the districts here in Central Texas. What was it that ultimately led to that decision?
Yes, so I love teaching. That is my passion. Education is so important, and having people who love it in the classroom and virtual is so important. So it was a very tough decision, but I looked at my number one priority, and like you say, Ashley is your mom. My parents are definitely important, but they're not in Texas. but my number one priority was my daughter, first and foremost. And she was slated to go to a preschool classroom with mixed age and mixed abilities, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And I taught in that classroom last year, and I know how hard it is. And we get sick and we clean like crazy. But like Ashley was saying, we don't know how this virus really has a lasting impact. And I don't want to put other community members or my family at risk unknowingly. And it was a tough decision to resign from this year.
Have you had any other colleagues do the very same thing?
Yes. So if you can see here, I love the entrepreneurial spirit here. I grew up in the Midwest, kind of easygoing, do what you do for your life. And I still want to do that, but just adapt, reevaluate, and change for what is needed. So I've started a business called Living and Learning 2020. And it's a wraparound support services for families. So when I say wraparound, I mean mentoring, tutoring, parent consultations for education or behavior. And I feel like that's always been my calling. So I'm adjusting how I do that.
And you're already meeting with families and students. What are some of the things that the people who reached out to you to seek your services, what are they saying to you? What are their biggest concerns? So
thank you to my family so far. Shout out to you. They are saying that they're just very grateful for the safety measures and the way that they can still receive support. Some families are virtual and some families I'm seeing in person, but we have the same expectations for safety measures. And like one of my families, the father is back from Panama and he's quarantined in his son's room. And they said, I said, oh, let's wait until a couple, maybe 2 weeks and see how it goes. Because again, I don't want to unknowingly impact my family first and foremost. I'll be selfish. I'm not a selfish person, but this has caused me to really think about my boundaries and what's important to me, and that's okay. But yeah, the families are very grateful, and a lot of them want that in-person support because we have a lot of working families. It's expensive out here everywhere. So that's the reality, is that they're looking for support, but maybe having a hard time either with budget or timing, and just really everything keeps changing a mile a minute. So it's a challenging time.
Yeah, Ashley and Michael, going off of what Nicole just said, how are you balancing, working with keeping your kids engaged with what's happening for school?
If I were to get called in to go back into the office right now, I would have to quit my job. So I'm going to choose my daughter 100%. And it's terrible that we have to choose that be in that situation to choose between working and, my daughter's education, but that's what I have to do. So I'm just preparing myself for that decision to come, if it does come, and just gonna continue to be beside her as she's learning her new life in kindergarten.
Wow. And Michael, what about you?
Well, for myself, it was an interesting change. I'm a behavior analyst. My wife is a therapist, so we both had to learn what telehealth meant and who allows it, who doesn't. For behavior analysts right now, especially with schools, with insurance companies, they're making those decisions month to month. So we don't know if I'll be able to continue working with my clients virtually until right at the end of September, if I can do that in October. So it creates kind of a little bit of anxiety about that. But as long as I'm able to work online with my clients and as a PhD student, take my classes online, I'm able to balance that pretty well with my sons, having their classroom in the hallway and the family room. But I do have to carve out that time so that they know that they can rely on me for help if they need it. Luckily, they're academically proficient enough that they can carry on their academics on their own. But technology issues, the internet, my son will text me that I need to turn the router on and off because things are lagging. So that'll happen quite a bit.
You set me up for this very next question, because that was what I wanted to know, is that because everything is online, how are you all planning to handle any technical issues that might arise?
Well, I can speak to that.
Yeah.
I was at a person's house this morning, a client, and I just kept, oh, bless these teachers, because they are working so hard. And, you have kids saying, "You're lagging, you're frozen, it's not working." And, they don't know, because they're talking to, like, everyone's muted and they're talking to a brick wall at times. So it is really challenging, but we decided to get like a mesh Wi-Fi with extra points throughout the house. I will be hosting some like study hall type groups here, so we wanted to make sure that we had a strong connectivity, but that is definitely a challenge.
Ashley, are you prepared to handle any kind of technical issues that might arise when your daughter starts school on Thursday?
Yes, my mom, like I said, being high risk, she has to work from home. So we upgraded our internet in order to be able to have her work from home, my daughter on the computer, and if I'm able to work from time to time, my everything else as well. So we've had to upgrade. Yeah.
Which costs money.
Yes.
It does. And I think one of the things that I realized, because we have high speed internet and we're having issues. For instance, last Friday, I had to cancel a social group that we were going to do virtually because the internet kept going in and out in the entire neighborhood. But when I work with clients that are in our outlying areas like Liberty Hill and Hutto, they don't all have access to high-speed internet. My in-laws live in Kingsland. They're still doing satellite internet. So when you start talking about outside of the Metroplex area, there's great inequity in that service. And, I praise that we have had that opportunity to do virtual, but I worry about folks who don't have access to reliable internet, reliable technology. How are they going to be able to do online learning so seamlessly as we do, yet we still complain about the bumps in the road? They could go out for an entire day and not be able to learn.
Yeah. Has there been any kind of assistance talked about, made available for people who may not have those capabilities to connect to high-speed internet or have those kinds of technical issues?
Yes, I do know. Oh, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I was just going to say in Round Rock, they've made a good effort in pushing for social services. Just recently, the board voted on a big package to provide more social workers in the schools. They've been sending out emails about if they're receiving assistance already, they can get high-speed internet for $10 a month through AT&T or Spectrum. So there's information that's out there, and it's been very helpful. Now, whether or not people, having worked in the schools just recently, whether or not they're actually accessing it, that's a different story. But the help is there.
Yes, I was just going to echo that. I know Leander ISD was trying to find out who needs the help and who needs the support, and they were setting up hotspots in those areas that were had lower connectivity. And of course, they've done a lot of, the passing out the technology from the schools. That's been helpful as well.
Ashley, I wanted to ask you too, because kindergarten is such a formidable time for a child's mind. Do you know how your daughter's day is going to be laid out, how the teacher's planning to tackle that with her?
The schedule is still kind of flexible right now. They don't have anything set in stone, but so far she's going to start school at 7:40 a.m. She's going to spend a couple of hours with full class online, and then there's that's what the synchronous times that they'll be together, and then asynchronous times, about 3 hours out of the day, where they can do things on their own or lessons on their own at that point. And there's a couple of breaks in between, but I still think it's really a lot of screen time for somebody so little.
As parents, how are you all taking this in? I mean, this is so different than when I went to school, when you all went to school, because we just didn't have this issue to deal with. How are you all feeling about everything at the moment?
My daughter's attended daycare and preschool type of environment since she was younger than that, like under one, because education is so important to me, and that socialization and learning social skills and learning just how to work with diverse populations is really important. And it was a really tough decision to take her out and take myself out. But it is just it's a crisis, it's a pandemic. And I think it's maybe a short-term Band-Aid, and we'll have to figure out what to do moving forward. But we had to, make that decision for our family.
And Michael, what about you?
I'm excited about the changes that might happen after this is all over. I worked in instructional design, instructional technology for many years before coming back into teaching. And there's the technology that we were learning about 10 years ago, they're still not using that technology in the school setting. So I'm excited about the fact that in one big stroke of the brush, schools have had to up their game in 21st century learning. And I'm hoping that as we move forward, that schools will continue to provide more choice, that there can be kids who spend part of the day virtually. Some of the kids can go to work, come and do online school, or they can do their electives in person. And there's a huge growing homeschool community out there that I feel oftentimes get shut out, or they have to spend their own money to be able to access education. And I think that if our school districts continue to think outside of the box, that we can provide more robust services for our community. Let me give you one real quick example. One of the local school districts, I just got off a meeting with them. They're taking some of the buses and going to completely safe protocol, disinfecting the bus. But for special education services, they're driving to the school, to the kids' homes and providing services that way, so that they can get the one-on-one time for OT and occupational therapy and speech therapy that is needed face-to-face, of course, with all the safety protocols. I don't see why that couldn't continue to help outreach for kids who are, with autism and diagnosed at 1 or 2 or 3. Those are things that we could do as a community that through our school could provide just a much greater scope of what education is right now as a building.
So if I could add to that, I was ready to do that in March, boots on the ground, even through the hardest of times. I just needed my kiddos, I call them, to get their services. And so I worked in a program that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. It's called ELE, Early Learning Environment. And so it's a class with some typically developing peer role models, and then kiddos who receive special education services from 3 years old to 4 and 5 before kindergarten. And I was ready to put boots on the ground and go to their house and sit outside with them and do, a mini lesson and just a session for what they needed, pack my car up. And so I think there are so many creative solutions that we have to get kind of the bureaucracy out of the way to form these positive, creative, effective solutions. So when my school asked me, like, what ideas do you have? And I was like, So I thought, surely I can't be the only one thinking this. I had some colleagues that said the same thing. We'd love to, but they're telling us don't, and I get it. And I don't, again, the whole reason I resigned this year was for safety. I understand, but we also have students who have huge deficits that need specialized support. And we need to figure out how to get that to them.
And Ashley, let's go to you. How, as a parent, are you handling this very different environment for your daughter who's just starting out school?
I'm trying to stay as even-keeled as I can possibly be. I don't want her to panic and think that something's wrong. This may be her new normal, and that's okay if that has to be it. I would love it if she could get to play with other kids and her friends that she already has, but we can't do that right now. And hopefully we can soon. But, I want to make sure that she knows that every decision I make is to make sure that she's safe. That's first and foremost. So it doesn't matter what's going on, she's going to be safe. And as long as she knows that I'm keeping her safe, I think she'll be okay.
I want to wrap up our conversation here in just a moment. So I thank you all for participating today. But my final question, and we'll start with Michael and Ashley. What I want to know is, what do you think it's going to take for you to feel safe and comfortable having your children go back to a building and in-person classes? What is it going to take to be able to do that again for you all?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Vaccines and getting the numbers down is what's important to me. And not a vaccine that's rushed, something that has been tried and tested and proven that will be effective.
I'm in the same boat. A vaccine or the positivity rate under 5%. Hospitalizations, that's another one I watch. Whenever I start to get anxious when the ICU bed percentages is under 10%. I've been watching that, and it's not that low, but it's been in the low numbers for quite a while. So that's part of what we're watching.
And for you, Nicole, is there anything that could get you to go back to teaching at a physical building and not at your own home?
I was just asked last night, would you want to be a long-term sub? So it's my passion. I love it, and it's really hard to stay away. But I do have to keep in mind, like Ashley and Michael are saying, that a vaccine that's trusted and proven and vetted is really important to us. I know a lot of people don't like to equate with the flu, but if you think about the flu vaccines, the viruses morph and they figure out how to get to you. So even with a vaccine, I guess I'm just very cautious and just taking a day at a time.
That is the motto of the moment at the moment. So again, everybody, I just want to say that we were having this conversation. We are not able to touch on every single topic that I would like to discuss because these three have important lives to lead and kids to get back to. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us for this conversation. We really do appreciate it. And maybe we'll touch back in with you in another week or month or two. I think that'd be maybe a good idea.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you very much.
Thank
all right,
you.
everybody. That was Ashley Walker, Nicole Lee, and Michael Ota. Thank you all again so much for joining me. I so much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. And if you want to find out more coverage, we are reserving a lot of our stories right now in an effort called Set for School. And it's over on our website. You can find it on KXAN.com. All the details there. We've listed what the plans are for each district to deal with COVID-19. And we have many more stories to go with it as well. So please stay with us here and we will keep you updated. For now, everybody, I'm Will DuPree in the KXAN Live Studio. Please stay safe and healthy, and if at all possible, still at home.